March 9th, 2010. I'm joined by Councilman Wesson. Madam Clerk, we have 6 items here. Is anyone here for item number 6? Come forth, please.
And item number 6 is a report from the Los Angeles Department of Aging relative to accepting a grant amendment to the Health Insurance Counseling Advocacy Program, negotiating a contract for senior services in the West Adams service area, and approving technical adjustments for the provision of respite services.
Jake?
My name is Jacob Wood. I'm with the Department of Aging. I'm the Director of the Planning Division, and these items on this agenda are routine items. The first one being to accept one-time only money for the high cap program. The second item is to negotiate the 2009-2010 contract with People Coordinated Services to accommodate the appeal process that is still in discussion up at the state level, and then to approve technical adjustments for the provision of respite services. The California Department of Aging had eliminated AB 2800 programs, and we failed to put enough money to accommodate those agencies that were providing that service. So we want technical adjustments so we can meet that need.
Mr. Wesson, is this in your district?
Yes, I'm very comfortable.
Very comfortable, so moved?
Yes.
Okay, so moved, Jake. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 5.
And item number 5 is a report from the Department of Cultural Affairs relative to accepting a $200,000 donation from the Walt Disney Company for the city's Heritage Month celebration programs.
Andrew Kasdan, Department of Cultural Affairs. I'm here on behalf of Olga Garay, our General Manager, and Saul Romo. Olga Garay is on jury duty and could not be here today, and Saul Romo is in San Pedro working on an RFP in respect to public-private operations of DCA facilities.
You're good.
Thank you. The first item is a request from DCA to accept a donation in the amount of $200,000 from the Walt Disney Company. This funding represents the completion of a 5-year agreement between the Department of Cultural Affairs and the Walt Disney Company. The total from the agreement was $1 million. This last $200,000 is to be used for the production of Heritage Month calendars and cultural guides, the DCA's Music LA classes, and the cost of the opening ceremonies held at City Hall at the start of each celebration.
I just asked a question because I saw the guides, and I'm wondering now, many things are going online. Is the guide online as well?
It is online.
Right. And how much does it cost to produce the booklet?
Each booklet is between $3 and $6, depending on the...
And how many booklets do we make?
We make I'm not sure of the exact number. I can get back to you on that.
Before we come to council, good morning. We're joined by Councilman Reyes.
Good morning.
Thank you. We're on item number 5 right now.
Between 5 and 10,000 copies.
$5,000 and $10,000. And name the various months that we celebrate for the record.
Okay, well, the various months are, we have the African American Heritage Month, which is in October. We have the... February.
Right.
We have the Asian Pacific Islander Heritage...
So, Mr. Chair, I'd take October. We get 2-3 extra days.
I know, that's right. I know, that's very good, Herb.
So I like your idea better. I'm with you.
Okay.
We have the Asian Pacific Islander American Heritage Month.
Right.
And we have the Latino Heritage Month.
Right.
And then, of course, we have the Latino, Asian American, Pacific Islander. And, of course, we have the Asian American, Latino. I'm missing one. I'm sorry.
Well, I want you, this is your first time testifying before committee?
Yes, it is.
All right, so when you come again, you'll have it all squared away. When you go to council, either you or Olga will be there, and you'll give a good presentation. Let's give this young city employee a good hand there for giving us a shot there. We're going to recommend approval. Any questions? I know I asked the next time they saved like $5,000 for St. Patrick's Day or something, or
Okay, we'll do
$2,500,
that.
but if you could, in the future. Thank you, and we're going to thank the Disney Corporation for this great donation. This ends the cycle?
This is the last grant from the cycle, and I will just point out that the Department of Cultural Affairs Marketing and Developing Division, as well as the Mayor's Office, is actively seeking a new title sponsor, as well as continuing our relationships with our existing sponsors to further the programming.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just one.
We're going to recommend approval. Thank you. Next item, Madam Clerk.
And item number 4 is also a report from the Department of Cultural Affairs relative to approval to submit a grant application to the National Endowment for the Arts in the amount of $100,000 for local arts agencies' Access to Artistic Excellence Grant.
So this item is a request, Andrew Kasdan, Department of Cultural Affairs. This item is a request from the National Endowment for the Arts to apply for a $100,000 grant. This particular grant is an opportunity to fund multiple municipal agencies to provide services to the arts and cultural field. In a nutshell, what we're asking for is a professional development initiative where we will provide training and funding to arts organizations for professional development activities.
Do you have a central guide that makes sure artists from throughout the city, not necessarily by council district, but from throughout, that a significant number is from the central part of the city, the east side of the city, the south side, the San Pedro Valley, etc.? Do you spread it around?
Well, what we do is we have a peer panel process, and the peer panel makes recommendations to the executive director. Then what we do to provide equity is we look at the totality of the pool, and we base the awards on geographic considerations. Our primary focus is to provide access and to provide services where few or no services exist. So it's important to spread the money.
Right. Very good. Mr. Weston? Mr. Reyes? Okay, so ordered. Thank you very much. All those will go forth to council. Now, we're going to take up the library issues. I want to welcome everybody here. We're going to take public comment first, then we'll have a presentation by the library department. I also want to mention that I run, when there's more than 5 cards, I run a 1-minute clock. If you need additional time, please feel free to speak as you get your point across. We're very much interested in trying to hear your concerns and ideas as we face this challenge of our current budget crisis. So, Shannon Salmon, thank you. And also, it helps too if you could state your name, and if you do work at a branch, we always like to know what branch that you work at.
Okay. Hi, my name is Shannon Salmon. I work at the Playa Vista branch. I am the teen librarian there. This Sunday, I went to the Apple store and I bought a new iMac and a little purple iPod. Why? Because I have a job. I then had brunch at a swank little place near the beach with friends. Why? Because I have a job. On Friday, I bought 3 giant bags of dog food for my 2 dogs that I adopted. Why? Because I have a job. On March 1st, I paid the mortgage on my condo that I bought 2 years ago. Why? Because I have a job. The unemployment rate in LA these days is very high. Last I heard, 12%. I really think that you guys need to be knocking your heads together trying to create jobs rather than spending time thinking about saving jobs. It's important to the people of LA that we have jobs, and it's important to the future of LA that we have jobs. Saving jobs should be a no-brainer, like saving the jobs of the library and rec and parks. Creating jobs should be the most important thing on the agenda. No layoffs for workers, and get on to trying to create jobs for LA. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Hillary St. George? Excuse me, Hillary, is there a Hillary George and a Hillary St. George? Wow, isn't that amazing? All right, good job. Right, and right in the same card. We didn't know that here. Okay, good job. Okay.
Good morning. I'm Hillary St. George. Hillary George is over there. And I'm a librarian with the Los Angeles Public Library. And I'm also the mother of a 2-year-old daughter. And I came to speak today about how the repercussions of the current budget you've been debating will affect us. And when I say us, I don't mean us, librarians and staff. I mean all of us. Let me start by saying that I'm afraid for my daughter. I'm afraid she'll grow up in a city that doesn't provide our children with the tools necessary to distinguish between Wikipedia and more legitimate sources of information. I'm afraid that our children are going to grow up to be adults who don't possess very basic information-seeking skills, and that they'll be ill-equipped to search for jobs and educate themselves outside of the classroom. I'm afraid our children are going to grow up to be uninformed, or worse, misinformed, about things that have great impact on their lives. These things may sound abstract, but in our computer age, they're vital to the growth of our city, in my opinion. Under the current proposals, our library system will lose most of our librarians under the age of 40. And unlike the librarians who will remain afterward, these librarians, can I continue?
Yes.
Thank you. These librarians grew up with computers in the digital age. They're the library's most eager and forward-thinking librarians because they have the most at stake in determining what our library, and by extension our city, is going to look like in the 21st century. Worse yet, the cuts will disproportionately affect the children's librarians in our system. Our children's librarians are responsible for educating our children about how to conduct research and scrutinize resources. These are the people that we've entrusted, all of us we've entrusted, to encourage childhood literacy, information literacy, and reading. And they will be among the first to go, these people, and they're never going to return. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hillary St. George. Have you ever been on St. George Street? All right, but St. George Street's in the Los Feliz district. Hillary George. Is it George? I like that.
I'm Hillary George, and I also work at the Durant branch.
I'm sorry, I just cannot believe it. So I've got to, give me a moment to get my composure. Okay.
Oh, good.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
I am a children's librarian, and continuing with the idea that children's librarians will be, and youth librarians will be disproportionately laid off because they were the last ones hired, I just really want to encourage the library department and everyone to work together and think outside of the box, think really creatively. I put down a few bizarre ideas so that we can just start thinking in a different way than we usually do. Disney just donated $200,000 to Heritage Month. The library supports cultural diversity and heritage year-round. Would Disney want to donate to us? Would other large companies want to donate to us? Are there money-making city departments that we could borrow money from? My neighborhood council just gave away $150,000 that they didn't spend. Could that have been used for the library? Could we do something like adopt a librarian? Are we shooting ourselves in the foot by making sure that the funding is always equally distributed? Can I continue? Could some branches be more eligible for public grants while others would be more likely to get private donations? Have we considered voluntary layoffs? Is it possible there are people working who aren't happy in their jobs but don't quit because they would be ineligible for unemployment if they did? There's a lot of money in this city, and there's a lot of library supporters, so I hope that we can match those two up. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Hillary. Hannah Kramer.
Hi, I'm from the Durant Library too, and my last day is March 12th. I'm retiring. I'm one of the older librarians.
How many years with the city?
Let's see, about 35.
35.
Yeah, 30 years altogether for half time. And I spoke to my daughter last night, who's 30 years old and is very tech savvy and uses the library all the time. She orders books online, asks the librarian for reading advice, and now will take her son to story times. And one of her friends is a scriptwriter who writes in the branch every day. He enjoys the ambience. And you've heard already about the many services the library provides: free educational services, job information, leisure activities, internet, crafts, concerts. Please seriously reconsider layoffs in public libraries. Libraries give our communities more bang for the buck than any other institution. Just examine the library's building program, which was approved by 75% of our city's residents. A mere $186 million spent on construction of 30-something libraries, all finished on time and below budget. Which other city department can boast of such success? My neighbor, who originally was against the library's building program because he felt the city overspends and does not benefit its constituents, told me, the library department did a good job. I love my new branch, and so do my grandchildren. You were right. Now, after building beautiful state-of-the-art institutions which bring people together with books, programs, art, and literature, the city readies to lay off the young, enthusiastic children's librarians to perhaps balance the budget. Forget it. The $1 million you save will need to be replaced by you spending much more to be reelected. Don't cut the secular church in your communities. Stand up and say no layoffs in this small department, and let's find ways to raise money. I like your way. You mentioned a card. I think a gold card that Councilman Tom LaBonge you mentioned would be a good idea. And I asked actually my daughter for suggestions, and she said, well, why don't people give $50, $100 extra, get a 4-week loan instead of a 3-week loan, 1 hour extra on the computer per day, and reduce charges for community room use for, like, say, a gathering such as a birthday party. So your constituents, who are our patrons, will support a positive approach.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, and we'll miss you at the Will and Ariel Durant Library. Madeline Kerr? Okay, who filled the card out? She did. Okay, I hope everything's okay. Just thinking, Roy, you were up to some special action there. Mary McCoy. We're going to run the clock 2 minutes since we'll do that, so we'll go to 2. Everybody gets to speak as long. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. Good morning. My name is Mary McCoy. I'm a librarian in the History Department at Central Library. And this weekend I went to the Hollywood Farmers Market, and I had the opportunity to talk to many city residents about the library and listen to their stories. One young man told me that he spent so much time at the John C. Fremont Library as a child that he felt like he grew up there. And he still uses that library today as an adult. A lot of people raved about the new Silver Lake Library and told me how excited they were to finally have a library right in their neighborhood. I talked to a couple with young children who had just moved to Hollywood. And when I told them that there was a library right around the corner from their new home, their faces lit up and they asked me, is it open right now? So when I was talking to people, I was asking passersby, do you have a minute to talk? And they would keep going. But when I finished my sentence and said about the library, they turned around and they came back. When I look at the devastating cuts that the Los Angeles Public Library is facing, I hope that you'll really try to understand and see exactly what it is that the library does. Because people in Los Angeles know, and they love their libraries, and they will fight to keep them open. They know that the libraries help families prepare their children to read, give teens a safe place to go after school, provide lifelong learning opportunities for adults. We know that cuts to city services are inevitable, but please don't choose to make them where they're going to hurt the people of Los Angeles the most.
Thank you very much. Teresa Isaias?
Hi, my name is Teresa Isais. I'm a clerk at the Atwater Village branch. Yay, clerks. I'm here to speak for clerks specifically because we are the first people that patrons see when they walk in the door. We are generally the last people that they deal with before they leave. When the new Silver Lake branch was going to open, we anticipated losing some of our patrons who actually live closer to Silver Lake, and we did. However, we noticed an interesting trend. After a little while, they started trickling back more and more. Until now, most of our patrons that used our specific library are back. And over again, I heard the same things from different people. They liked our branch because they liked the human contact. They didn't like self-checkout. They wanted to be able to speak to a human, to have a human face, somebody to discuss their finds with, their problems with, to ask when their books were due, to get help renewing. All of those kinds of questions are things we deal with on a daily basis. I believe that there are ways that we can generate more revenue for the library. a lot of people place holds on books and have them sent to their own community branch. I think it's possible that we could charge even a nominal fee for that luxury of having things sent to your branch instead of having to go to a branch and pick them up. We could collect fines from patrons prior to them having the ability to use computers. May I continue?
Just if you could conclude.
Okay. There are other avenues to generate revenue. I don't think layoffs will help. I know from a clerk's point of view, we are so busy every day that laying off clerks is really going to create hassle for everyone. All right.
Thank you very much. Patel Gonzalez, V. Ita, I'm going to have you all fill the seats right here. Dimitri Taylor and Keisha Taylor, if you all want to fill the chairs. Okay, thank you. I do want to let you know I changed my rules because of how good librarians were to me and to my colleagues as children growing up in the city. And I said this before at a hearing. Tony Shea was our librarian. I don't know if anybody worked with Tony. But I changed the rules. But we do want to have enough thorough conversation with the librarian, so if we could speak from our heart and take your time, but no, we want to try to hear from the librarian as well. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Patel Gonzalez. I work at the Benjamin Franklin Library in the Boyle Heights area. And I've only worked at the Lincoln Heights branch and the Boyle Heights in my 7 years with the library. But those are two neighborhoods that do not have a lot of resources around them. And the library is the first place and last place that a lot of my kids, I'm a children's librarian, come to. We are their second home. We are the after school program. We are their caregivers after they leave the school, and they're with us until 8 p.m. when we close. And on Saturdays, they're there waiting for us when we're open at 10 in the morning, because that's what the library is. That's the place they come to. So I would just ask that you rethink, cutting our staff, because it would mean cutting our hours, that we will be open for those children and the parents that need us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is V. Ha. I'm the young adult librarian at the Lincoln Heights Branch Library. This is my third visit, I guess, to City Hall. I'm here to talk about the library services that we have at the Lincoln Heights Branch Library. As Carla just mentioned, Lincoln Heights is a low-income community. We don't have an arcade. We don't have a movie theater. We have park and recs. We have other park activities, but we're one of the few things for teens and children to do in Lincoln Heights. At the library, we have a knitting club. We have a Chinese language class for all who want to come. We have a teen council for teens who want to be involved in the library, also a volunteer program. We have game day for those who, want to play cards or want to play, Yahtzee. We also have story time for talking to, teaching parents to read, also teaching young children the love and joy of reading. We have, LACMA art classes. These are just our regular programs. We also have seasonal programs that we like to do. For Day of the Dead, I have 4 weeks of programs where I bring in, we make sugar skulls and decorate them. That's very, very popular. I usually have about 30 kids, 40 kids a week. That's not counting the parents. And, these activities happen to the library because we're open and we have the staff available to host these activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Keisha Taylor, and I just wanted to let you guys know that the library is very important to teens, because ever since I was a little girl, I've always heard, oh, stay out of trouble, stay out of gangs, and stay in the library. But by cutting these librarians who we care for very much, you're cutting a part of us out. And that's very important to me, partially because of the fact that in a few years, teens are going to be running the country. And if we don't have the means and the necessary rights of our education, we're going to be making poor choices. And we've already been making poor choices, and we don't need any more. We really don't. By cutting our education, you're cutting a lot from our lives. Because you always say, everyone in this room has said it once. Go to college, become something, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be something. But then you're cutting the things that we need to become these things. You're being hypocritical, and it's not fair, especially since everyone in this room got their education. They became what they wanted to be. And I think that us teens should be able to become what we want to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Good morning. My name is Demetri Taylor. Keisha Taylor is one of my teens. I am highly proud of my teen and what she has stated today. That means that I have done a great deal. I wrote a paper, but I'm going off this paper. I am going to say that I think that I have done a wonderful job in parenting. To instill such a entity in their life, to gain education, to have what they could call a coalition. They get together and they brainstorm. They brainstorm for success. They have librarians there that have the heart and the tenacity and the dedication. We know we adults do not want to deal with teens because they are at that age of blackness, darkness, very unaware and don't know where they're going. Well, what you do is when you have a place like Teenscape in Central Library, where they're able to abstractly do poetry or express themselves and have game day, Xbox day, resume writing day, college preparation day, find yourself day. It is a wonderful place for teens to be. We all know that if ships sail without a captain, without a plan, without navigational course, we do not have a boat or a ship that will sail. Please do not throw these children, these teens, off to the wind. Please allow them the opportunity to have the same success which you have obtained. Do not have them scrambling for their success. They do desire. I see it. Thousands of them want to have an opportunity to be successful, productive people in society. I treasure that thought that there are going to be counsel people that will counsel me in the future, and it all comes from the library.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor, everyone there. The next four cards will be Henry Gambill, Verdel Flores, OK Kagan, is that correct? Thank you very much, and Roy Stone. Okay. And I'm going to ask you, because we're going to expedite this if you could, because we do want to make sure everybody gets a chance. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Henry Gamble. I'm the young adult librarian at Palisades Branch. I've appeared several times before you, and I focus mostly on teens and children, but I thought I would give voice this morning briefly to the needs of our senior citizens who populate our libraries. We're the place, when I think of the Palisades Branch, we're an affluent community, but there still are retired people that lived on fixed incomes, and they come in every night. They're the ones that get the value line to help manage their portfolios because they know that they can't afford $1,000 subscription, and they come every day. They're the ones that come and read the newspapers that we have. We have the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the LA Times, etc., because they can't afford the subscriptions, and they tell us so. They're the ones that come and say, there's this new technology, I've been meaning to get on board with it, it's called email. I want to be in contact with my family in the Midwest, but I don't know how. I used to be in higher education, and I didn't have to teach the college kids how to use a mouse, what it is, and what Google is, and how to search. We're also the place that has the Saturday matinee movies. We don't call it senior movies, but 95% of the people that are there are senior citizens with an average age of about 75 years old, including Gina, who comes an hour early, and at 80 years old helps set up tables and chairs. We give them free candy and movie because of the great support from our Friends Association, which helps us with our needs, and they have a riot. We showed Guys and Dolls a few months ago, and we packed the joint. It's a vital place for our seniors where they also come and they serve through the grandparent reading program. Uncle Sal, my good friend who comes Saturdays, he's at a point in his health, and I'll be really quick, where he uses an oxygen tank. He shows up on Saturdays and he reads to kids because he knows it gives his life great purpose to enhance their literacy at that crucial point in their lives. And he has such a beautiful voice that adults come over and say, "Can he read to me too?" So please, let's not lose sight of the fact that senior communities are built in our libraries. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry.
My name is Verdel Flores. I'm a half-time adult librarian at the Mar Vista branch. And I was a new librarian when we as citizens passed Prop 13. I lived through that devastating time only because we as the library district, I was working for Altadena at the time, chose to do job sharing. We did not devastate the staff. We did not devastate our book budget. We did not close our branch, our main library. We kept our services there because our library director was innovative. And I believe that in this council and in this committee, there are some inventive minds that can come up with solutions other than firing, because that is what you do when you lay off people. You can come up with something better than that to serve our communities. Also, I, as an adult librarian, I teach a computer class, so I'm building on Henry's comments. I have the same set of 5 people show up every 2 weeks. They're wonderful at the end of the 2 hours, but by 2 weeks have gone by, they need the same instruction over and over. And they're always saying how patient you are. I said, this is my job as the librarian. I'm an educator, I'm an instructor, I'm here to provide you with information. Don't pull libraries out of the lives of the people who need it the most during this time of economic distress.
Thank you very much.
My name is Ole Kagan. I'm an MC at the Durant Library. Like Henry, I'm going to name some names of people who are going to be affected by the cuts in services and the cuts in staff. Let's start with Helen Colton, who's in Mr. Tamabanja's district. She's 92 years old. She's a spry lady who comes to the library weekly. She checks out books and she attends our programs, like the public speakers training we created a few weeks ago. She's 92, but she came to get some pointers. Or Mr. Jacques Fauti, who's 86, who came to the library a few years ago to learn how to turn a computer on. Mr. Jacques Fauti now has a computer at home, but he still comes to the library to get some advice and to check out dieting books because he wants to stay trim. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Let's talk about Dennis, one of the kids who, like me, grew up at the library. Dennis came first when he was 3 feet tall. He was carried by his parents. He was talking to the staff a few weeks ago. He's about that tall now. Our staff, if they're cut, they're going to be missed by our community of patrons. But I'm especially worried about Hillary George, who's back there, our children's librarian and LAPL's newest and greatest hire. Now, that's not my opinion, although, of course, she is the greatest. That's the opinion of the thousands of children who come through the library every week. And if she's fired, I urge all of you in this honorable committee to come to my library and explain to the parents how to get their children to stop crying because their favorite librarian is gone. Layoffs aren't the solution. I'm mailing to your office a list of solutions that I've come up with, and I hope we can institute those instead of layoffs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Roy Stone.
Whether we have more unemployment, more crime, more violence, a city to be ashamed of rests on how much our city council values what the library does for the people of Los Angeles. Is it feasible to slash more numbers from the library as the mayor proposes and consider that LAPL still even exists? Will you let the mayor destroy the library system that benefits every one of your communities and improves your lives of your constituents? It's hard to do this after hearing all of these other people. The right of the people to have access to books, computers, a safe place, a helpful librarian to guide them rests on your shoulders. It won't be easy, but someone has to stand up and champion for what the Los Angeles Public Library does for the community. We're asking you to do that.
Thank you, Roy. Now, the last cards that I have right now, and then we're going to hear from the library administration, are Leslie Gunning, Rachel Kitzman, Adele Walker, and Kitty Kroger.
Oh. Just two?
Please. Okay, it's 9:15. We have how many more cards? Because we have had a 40-minute public hearing right now. So, well, not 40-minute. We've had about a 30-plus minute. So after these cards, we're going to close the public hearing. So please go ahead.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Leslie Gunning. I live in Studio City. I have a teenage daughter. She would be here today, except she has an English test and she can't. When she heard about the possible layoffs and reduction in services and the possibility that the teen librarian, where I should say I'm a patron and a supporter of the library. That's my connection. But she said, when considering the possibility of laying off the teen librarian, she said, they can't do that. It's my life. The teen council is my life. And I know that she and many others would do whatever they can to support, raise money, whatever, play their role. And I'll try to be brief. I will be brief. Let me say, when our family moved to Los Angeles from Charlottesville, Virginia, 3 years ago, one of the first things we did was go to our local library. We have always been avid readers and supporters of public libraries, and we wanted to get new library cards. Little did we know we would end up with so much more. In particular, the Sherman Oaks branch of the Los Angeles Public Library became an invaluable resource and connection to our new community. We were welcomed by the teen librarian, Karen Pickard-Four, who I've since learned is on the low end seniority-wise. She told us about programs and opportunities for our daughter, who was a 7th grader at the time. She's now a 10th grader. Jacqueline attended her first teen council meeting at the branch under the direction of Mrs. Pickard-Four soon after, and has been part of this outstanding group of rapidly growing, there are roughly 40 to 50 kids involved, rapidly growing group ever since. She volunteers at the library, helps with the group's newsletter, is actively involved in promoting and supporting teen programs. We've witnessed firsthand how one's commitment, patience, creativity, and willingness to mentor can positively influence and shape future generations. I cannot emphasize enough or just how important the Los Angeles Public Library is to our family. And from what I've seen, the other branches that we frequent, which are always full of so many, just a diverse population, plays an enormous role in their life as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rachel?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My name is Rachel Kitzman, and I am a librarian at Teenscape in the Central Library. I have worked there for about 2.5 years. Last night, for about 2.5 hours, I was baking. I baked about 12 brownies and about 3 dozen oatmeal cookies. I will not be eating these baked goods, nor will my coworkers, nor my long-suffering boyfriend. Instead, my baked goods will be consumed by the teens that will be coming to my programs tonight, tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, whenever I have them. Librarians for the Los Angeles Public Library and library staff routinely, periodically, must go above and beyond. We spend time outside of our working hours developing programs, procuring resources, networking, hustling, doing everything we can to make the Los Angeles Public Library the best library west of the Mississippi in the entire United States. Librarians at Los Angeles Public Library are always pushing. We innovate with programming, creating anime clubs, gaming clubs, book groups that focus on manga, graphic novels, new teen literature. We are also on the cutting edge of the digital age, connecting with our teens using Twitter, Facebook, any way that we can to make sure that they know about what we are doing and that we are always there for them. We are driven to serve our communities with passion, dedication, and creativity. The loss of these librarians, of the staff, myself included, would be disastrous for Los Angeles. I implore you, do not lose us. A short-term, finite monetary gain is not worth the loss of talented, committed professionals to other library systems, other cities, or other professions altogether. Ladies and gentlemen, support the citizens of Los Angeles by supporting the Los Angeles Public Libraries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Patel Wallace.
Hi. I'm an adult librarian at the John C. Fremont branch. I've been working for about 10 years for the city. And I'd like the committee members to look at the question of, well, we know, of course, we all know that the city is in serious financial trouble and that we need to make cuts. But ask yourself, is cutting library staff and budget, is that really going to be an important part of the solution to the city's problems, or is it going to be adding to the problems? And the reason I say that is because this city, as we all know, has a very high unemployment rate. It's going to get higher. The library, besides all the other wonderful things that it's been doing, serves as an important social valve in a time of difficult social problems, economic problems for citizens of this city. Our circulation, every branch I've talked to, it's way busier than it has been. I'm seeing people every day who have never been in a library before. One woman asked me if it was okay if she sat down while she was filling out her application for a card. I said, yes, of course you can sit down. Somebody else asked me if it was all right if you looked at a book who had come into the library. My point is that one of our functions is we help unemployed people find jobs. And one of our librarians has put up a wonderful website on our homepage to help people find jobs. Take a look at it. It's an excellent job finder, but they need us to help them with it. It serves as a social valve. People come in who, oops.
You could finish that statement.
Okay. All right. Well, a very quick example. A man came in. He said he wanted a book on the history of California. He said he'd never been in a library before. He'd been unemployed for 2 years and just didn't know what to do with himself, so he thought he'd come to the library. So I gave him a book on one of Kevin Starr's books on the history of California. He was very happy. I mean, these are the types of things that we're going to be doing more and more.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Kitty Kroger. I'm a retired high school librarian and English teacher, and now a patron of the library. I use the Eagle Rock Library quite frequently, sometimes the Cypress Park Library. I probably order interlibrary loan, about 5 books a month, and I also like to just browse the stacks and the new books. But every time I go into the Eagle Rock Library, it's just packed, and there's lots of kids sitting outside, and they're going in and out of the library and then hanging out in front. And I'm just thinking that for me, if the library's closed, if my branch closed, or if the hours were cut back, I would survive just fine because I know how to go to, I have the resources, I have a computer at home, and I can go to the bookstores and order books. I have the money to do that, although it would cut into my budget some. But there's a lot of people who don't. So I think it's just a basic question of fairness also. I just wanted to say that the library is like the best thing, I always say, since sliced bread. I mean, it's a place where you can go if you don't have air.
What's the second best thing? Maybe the librarians. I want to know. Jelly. Okay. All right.
if you don't have air conditioning at home, and so many people don't, you can go there in the summer for a few hours to get some relief. If you don't have heat in your house, you can go there. If you don't have any peace and quiet at home because everybody's screaming, you can go to the library. If you don't have a home, you can go to the library. And if you have nowhere to go after school, you can go to the library. And in this city of Los Angeles, and most big cities probably, but especially maybe LA, it's such an anonymous place. And the library is like the one of the few communal places where people can go to see other people, to be with other people, not even if they don't talk to them. And I think it would be a real tragedy to do away with
We do
libraries
too.
or cut
We
back.
do too. So when we hear from that. The last card we have here is Patrick Xavier.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Xavier. For 5 years, I was a young adult librarian at the Benjamin Franklin Library. Benjamin Franklin is located in Boyle Heights. It serves Roosevelt High School and Hollenbeck Middle School. Those are two schools of the Mayor's Partnership Program. For last year, I did outreach and spoke to over 1,000 students, telling them about the library, handing out library card applications. Probably over 95% of those students had no idea where the library was, what a library card did for them, how it could help them. I also supervise youth volunteers in the library and give them a chance to get involved. If libraries are cut, we're not going to have this sort of activity anymore. The impact is real. It's already happening. It's serious. Because of the ERIP program, I'm now at Lincoln Heights Library. There is no YA librarian at Boyle Heights anymore. What's going to happen to the Mayor's Partnership Plan? What's going to happen to 1,000 students a year who have no idea what a library is, have no idea how to use a computer? Many of the students in that area do not have internet access in their homes. What's going to happen if they do not have career or college counseling? Roosevelt only has one office of career counseling. How is that office going to serve around 4,000 students? These kids are going to end up criminalized. If the plan is to cut libraries and to emphasize police and fire, what sort of face is the city going to show to the youth of our city? Is it going to be an oppressive force, or is it going to be a force of opportunity and learning? What type of generation are we engendering here?
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate it. That concludes the public hearing. Everybody that's here, I'd like to ask if any comments, Mr. Reyes, before we call the librarian up.
I'll wait for the librarian now.
Okay, Mr. Weston, any comments? Okay, just to let you know, our committee is taking apart every aspect of that's underneath the charge of our Department of Aging, Department of Disability, Recreation and Parks, the Zoo, El Pueblo. We're all having separate subject hearings on that. You've all made great statements. We don't want to close anything in this city, but we have a certain challenge that we have to meet. We're going to ask that our librarian, who I'm sure doesn't want to close anything in this city, to give a report to answer to this, and if there's some solutions. I do know, and someone did mention the card concept idea, which was a previous committee with myself and Ms. Hahn, where we spoke of, did get resistance from your commission, because they always want the library to be free. But if $50 for a card means that the children's librarian is working at Central Library, I think there's enough of people to help in that in the city if we have a campaign like that. But we will discuss that later. But Mr. Martin Gomez, or the librarian, as well as Pat Kiefer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Labange, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Weston. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss with you the current situation of our library budget, as well as what it looks like for the coming year, Did you want me also to speak on items 2 and 3 as well?
Well, yeah, but in your comments, but the main thing is, what we want to hear is we all realize, and someone made it, I think the woman who goes to Eagle Rock Library said she'll have to adjust her budget, the citizen, the patron there. We all realize we have to adjust our budgets, but is there any adjustment here that could save these very important roles that you feel as a manager could still create service but at a reduced hours? Does it mean that we may have to, instead of open at this time, open at another time? Please continue. And if you have any handouts, the clerk will give them to us.
Right. I do not have any handouts.
Okay, the only handout I have that's not official, just to let everyone know, cost for a local branch, an Eagle Rock branch, a Las Vegas, a Mar Vista, it's about $40,000 a week to operate. That comes to about $2 million annually. A regional branch is about $50,000, which is $3 million annually, and the central branch is about $90,000 plus a week, about $5 million annually for that. And your total budget is?
$134 million.
$134 million. How much you get from the property tax guaranteed right out the bat?
The charter appropriation is 7 cents per $100, so that translates into roughly $75 million for this current fiscal year.
Right.
The difference between the $75 million and the $134 million comes from the general fund for all related costs, so that's roughly about $52 million.
$52 million.
We have a small amount of money that comes to us from revenues, not just fines, but grants as well as from the Library Foundation. It's about $7 million. So combined, all of that is about $134 million. Now, where we've been, just to put this in context, over the last 2 decades, the library has seen tremendous growth. As you know, we've gone from 62 branches to 73 branches. We're now managing about 1.5 million square feet. We've gone from 150,000 hours of service per year to just about 200,000 hours of service per year citywide. We've done that now in the late 80s. There were about 1,400 positions on staff. We're currently authorized for 1,100 positions. And given the ERIP as well as the vacant positions that we expect to lose, we're going to be just under 900 positions. So keeping all of that real estate as well as the services going, it's going to be very, very difficult without some service hour reductions.
I'm sorry, when you say 900, what's the percentage of total given your workforce? Where does that leave you?
That's about a 20% reduction overall
20%?
Staff from current fiscal year to next fiscal year if things go as we are the path that we're on right now. As you heard, council members, the library is a very staff-intensive and human interaction. Our transactions, yes, we do have some automated systems, but a lot of the work that we do is one-on-one or one-on-group with class visits. So the work that we do depends on, as you've heard, some very well-committed, dedicated staff members, whether it's children's librarians, young adult librarians, and you've heard some of the comments about how that makes a difference, how their skills make a difference in the community. We also have, just as a snapshot for today, we have 68 Friends groups at various branches throughout the city. The Friends are primarily rally around their neighborhood branch library. They do book sales, and they've raised about $160,000 a year citywide for us. We also have the Library Foundation. The Library Foundation recently hired a new executive. They were without an executive for the last year. The foundation is a separate 501c3 that works to support the library. But annually, we can count on them for about $3 to $4 million in grants, specifically for some programs that are outside of the library's regular operating budget. Programs like Grandparents and Books, which is a reading program to help young children be exposed to good literature, as well as our summer reading club and teen reading club.
Mr. Chair, I hate to interrupt, but one of the driving priorities has been this notion of public safety. Now, when we talk about public safety, it's been relegated to police and fire. I like to pose that the public library is part of a public safety program. The challenge here is, how do you define that? And what I mean, and the reason I'm asking you, and I hate to interrupt you, is as you're going through your description, could you focus on what type of impact is created to latchkey kids. You know, it's been it's been founded that between hours, I think it's 2 to 6, it's the highest period in which crime is committed by young people. And so my question to you is, have you the ability to begin to describe that impact? Can you quantify it? Can you give us numbers per branch and or area that speaks to that notion of public safety? Now, there's a lot of great programs. I've heard a lot of great things. I know there's one-on-one. But ultimately, the cost of hiring and maintaining a police officer, and then you compare it to a librarian, what's the relative cost? And what's the relative impact and the multiplier effect of that investment? See, that to me needs to be quantified, because the public and the voting public are the ones that are going to have to define, through the pressure they apply to every elected official, on what they want to see in this budget. We're hearing from librarians, and we know it's their job, and I don't need to be callous, but every department's going to fight for their department. But we need to take a step back and look, okay, how are we going to define public safety? And is the library system part of that? And if it is, how do you quantify it? How do you demonstrate it? What's the multiplier effect of that position in the library when it comes to public safety? Because that is what the public seems to prioritize. That's what we're hearing from every elected official. So I wanted you to see if you could, as you make your delivery, if there's a way in which you can enlighten us, if you will, of what that means. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but I just felt
all
that's
right.
important.
Appreciate you.
Mr. Reyes, that's a very good point. I don't actually have a quantified number to give to you. I can only tell you the anecdotal, as you've heard some of the stories here, as well as we do have some very prescribed programs after school that basically make the library a very safe place for kids.
Can you get that number? See, that's not going to help.
Yes.
We need to quantify it. We need to talk about numbers and dollars, because that's what budgets do.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you.
If you want to continue, but I appreciate Ed on that, is it all looks at, we're all part of the package.
Yep.
I think many of the public speakers said, what kind of city do we want to have? Ms. Taylor spoke about what kind of city we want to have, and her mentor spoke about what kind of city it is because of the program.
I have made it a part of my, as you know, I started in July of last year. I've made it a habit to get out and visit branches as often as possible. I can tell you that when I'm there between the hours of 3 and 6, 7, or 8 o'clock in the evening, the library rooms are full of young people and families, young people and tutors, young people working with our staff on how to use computers as well as homework help. We do have an active online homework assistance tutoring program that's going on currently. So, if there is, when you think about this in the context of what do the public school systems have to offer in terms of library resources, they're basically tapped out. They have very, very limited resources. So we have, in fact, become the after-school place as well as the de facto school library, something we don't get much recognition for, but something I think that's very important for us to do. As we look at the coming fiscal year, we are focusing on 3 primary goals with the idea that we want to position the library as an educational institution first, something that helps us support the educational academic needs of our students. Our 3 goals: we want to invest in new readers. That's the youngest ones to the adults who need reading help. The second is to help students succeed. The after-school homework help is one of those areas. And the third is to continue building the virtual library. There is a lot of information out there, as you all know, that's digital now. We want to make sure that the library is the one place that people can go to learn about ebooks, new media, digital formats, all the electronic formats that are out there currently. Many of those things people cannot afford, as you know.
That speaks to one of the public comments that one of the early speakers said about the youthful. I know how to spell internet, but I don't know necessarily how to get on it myself, even though Tony Shea did a great job for me. The same thing, too, is this talent that may be displaced, specifically on the issues of what is the charge, and I think the CAO's representatives here, because none of this, and I would speak, we don't want to do any of this, but we need to know what the challenge is against the library department, what is proposed in the budget, obviously trying to quantify for further discussion, Mr. Reyes is the CAO's representative here too? Because right now, most branch libraries are open on what hours? They're not open on Saturday, they're not open on Sunday, they're closed at 5 on Saturdays. 6, okay. The regionals, yeah. Okay, would it be harmful to Los Angeles? Let me ask this question here, because everything is about a cost of the overhead. If we closed on Sunday, how much would that save us? Would that save extra hours during the week at other facilities?
It would save in two ways. One is there's an actual dollar amount, which I believe is Sunday for Central Library only is $98,000 per Sunday. Okay, so you extrapolate that over.
$98,000
per Sunday.
To open up on Sunday?
Right. It's a huge building, 500,000 square feet.
$98,000 on that. So if that meant, now that's a decision that we could say, if that means that Lincoln Heights could stay open during the week more, we may have to give up Sunday.
Right.
Okay, we'd have to give up Sunday. I'm just saying, what we're trying to do is form an opinion that we could give to our colleagues on the council. How can we keep as much of the boat afloat and not have it sink as we go forward?
The second point I think you're touching on now, which if the main library were not open on Sunday, or other branches not open on Sunday, it would give us staff to spread around the system to maintain hours.
Got it. Okay, so that's an important issue. Now, on the normal hours of operation, what is your start time mostly?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. If we went to 11 a.m., does that save any cost that would help us through this crisis?
Sure. Every hour is an hour of expense. What we get into, though, and this is one of the things we're facing right now, when you have double shifts, because let's say a library is open from 10 to 8 at night, you don't have somebody working for, a 10-hour day. So you'd have to have actually dual shifts. What we're looking at is there a way for us to fit within a day,
like 12 to 8.
Right.
Or
so
7:30 from
exactly
11:30.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, I'm also looking at the librarians, because all of you are here today. Does this save jobs that are important of people who are committed to being public librarians, which are unique? Because we've all been in our libraries, and if we go into our libraries, we feel very proud because it's the one city facility that has 100% activity all the time. And no offense to our park system, but I've been to parks where there's not activity for a variety of reasons. Lack of support from the community that's there, some staffing problems, older facility, a newer gym at another park, things like this. So we're on the same page, but if you could give us some suggestions there.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, every hour is basically a human transaction, and the buildings that we've built over the last 20 years, which are marvelous, they're labor intensive because you have to have people on the floor. You also have to have staff who are going to be circulating books in and out, and then you want to have the librarian to actually help people. And then, as you heard earlier, if we do expect in our profession for our children's and young adult librarians to get out and do outreach in the schools and high schools, so you need to have coverage. Now, we're able to hold things together right now, even with 100 vacancies that have been frozen, because we have substitute librarians. We're able to call people on almost like substitute teachers on an as-needed basis. If things get more difficult for our budget and we're not able to do that, then certainly we would have a hard time backfilling. The substitutes are also used. We have people who are going to jury duty. We have people who become sick. We have people who are on vacation. So we're basically razor thin on how we staff our libraries at this point in time.
Thank you. And I want the CAO to tell us what the CAO's office is recommending for the library department right now. And tell me what branch that you went to as a child, and I'm kidding.
Okay, Jackie Vernon Wagner, CAO. And I grew up in Jamaica, so I went to the library there. But my home library right now is the Fairfax Branch Library. And my daughter, she goes on field trips there from 3rd Street Elementary. She also goes to the Fremont branch.
Right.
So we love the library system. And my husband orders books from Central Library, so total advocate. But on the issue of the budget, the mayor is in the process of formulating the proposed budget. And so I'm really not at liberty to say what is being proposed. We do have internal hearings going on. As Martine said, the service level impact so far, the library's been able to absorb, and I believe they're closed for 4 hours on Fridays. So, compared to a lot of other library systems, the service level impact has been minimal. With the budget situation, we are looking at, there may be some additional reductions to their service, to library service hours, but that would, that the city librarian will work on that or report on that.
Mr. Reyes.
What's the gap that we need to fill to minimize or avoid layoffs? What's the gap?
At this point, the library funding source is primarily made up of unrestricted general fund dollars.
Right.
The budget for this year, as the city librarian mentioned, is $134 million, but $129 of that does come from the general fund. The charter required minimum.
Again, because you said 76.
The library receives a charter required minimum amount that is
$75 million. We agree that's the price?
It's 75.9, so it's actually $76 million this year.
Okay.
That calculation is prescribed by Charter Section, I believe it's 531.
Right.
And it allows for a calculation based on the assessed real estate value.
Right.
An appropriation to be made from unrestricted general fund dollars. So it is not actually property tax dollars that funds that initial charter required minimum for the library.
Okay.
So what the general fund has to provide is the entire amount for the most
Jackie,
part.
it's very important that the CEO's office develop a one sheet that explains it, because many people have approached me that said their property tax goes to pay for the libraries. But what you're saying there, it's not the property tax, it's
No.
a requirement by charter that of our general fund it goes there. So please give us a one sheet what that
I have that, and I
specifically
can
is.
provide that to you, sir.
Thank you.
So for the most part, the lion's share of the library's budget is provided from the general fund. For this year, the assessed value did increase based on the report that was issued by the county assessor in August of 2009. And for August 2010, we anticipate that amount will go down. So the librarian did mention that they are positioning themselves, for the additional reductions.
Okay. I thank you for the explanation. I still didn't get an answer, though.
Okay.
What I'm trying to understand is that you have a gap that exists. We have this environment where people are wondering if they're going to be laid off or not. And so I want to understand the gap, because from the gap, you start thinking about strategies on how to fill that gap. So how can we start doing that? Today's meeting is about restructuring. The agenda as posted was to talk about how we address this. We wanted to hear from the director, but we have to start with something very basic. Is there even a ballpark figure, or we don't, or you don't want to even venture that?
The layoff amount, number that was assigned to the library was 100. And that was
100 employees.
Yes, 100 full-time positions.
And what does that mean in dollars?
That was their part of that. Well, in dollars, it depends on the positions that are identified. There could have been, because they're full-time equivalents, messenger clerks, clerk typists, and librarian one positions, I believe the library may have identified more than 100 individuals for layoff. So it is up to the library to determine the composition of that 100.
I understand, but is there a dollar figure that you were given to fill in terms of, were you told we have this much, now you have this much? What's that gap? What's that number?
It was not a dollar amount, it was a position count, a 100 FTE, correct. And then I was given the opportunity to do the mix and match of what those positions might look like.
So if we want to strategize and look at cutting hours, that equals a dollar amount, not a position amount.
Right.
So how are we supposed to get to that point if we're not given the basic information?
There are, again, this is an evolving process as we work with the mayor's office. There's two parts to it. The first part is, if you took at all of those positions that we're talking about, the exact deduction or the deduction to our payroll would be roughly between $17 and $20 million, okay? On top of that...
Did we say that again?
$17 to $20 million.
$17 to $20 million.
Right.
Is that's the gap at this time?
Well, on top of that, this will be the second, well, in this current fiscal year, I should say, we are also being asked to pay out of our general fund appropriation for utilities to the tune of $11.7 million.
But let me just tell you, I talked to the head of water and power, and they're going to still bill you. But if they don't collect, they're not going to shut the power off at your facility. So I think this is a real good argument that we have to get back to water and power, that it's the people's power. And so we should set that aside, and when times are good, we'll pay the bill. But I think that's something we have to instruct council. Same is true with parks.
Right, so we're at 31 million right now.
Roughly. Again, evolving, very roughly.
No, I understand, but again, if we're, as a committee, as a legislative body, we're trying to understand what options are being given, and I would hope that the mayor's office can help us with their insight as to how they see this. But now we have to start strategizing, okay, if we're going to cut hours here, how much does that get us to avoid the layoffs?
Sorry.
We have to start piecing, yes.
The direct salary cost for the positions that have been identified so far is $4.5 million.
4.5 million?
Yes, sir.
So that's a target. If we can shift operations around to make up for those 4.5, that means that's less people being laid off.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Mr. Weston.
You know what, I want to just quickly say that there's not a member on this committee that's not behind the libraries, and we want to, I think most of or a lot of the speakers that came here today used the word creative, and I think that we're definitely at a point in time where we're going to have to reinvent the city, and we're going to have to reinvent the various departments within the city, and we're going to have to choose what types of services that we need to provide for our constituencies. So with that said, you know, there were a couple of things that were mentioned today that I think we need hard answers from you. This discussion, I mean, I would love to have libraries open 24 hours a day. That would be great, but maybe during this period we should seriously look at, there are a lot of things that I like to do that I cannot do on Sundays. So maybe we should just take a hard look at that, and if we were to eliminate those hours, exactly how much do we save? Now also, Mr. Labange talked about, I think somebody said we start at 10 a.m., maybe we should look at starting at 11 or 11:30 and going to 7. Maybe you look at a way to save 2 hours out of the day. I mean, we don't want to put anybody out of work. Something that Mr. Reyes said earlier when he talked about the programs that the library provides to keep young people off the street. If there is a way to justify that this is like a deterrent to crime, and it is some kind of program, positive program for youth to be involved in, you may be eligible for other grants. You know, so I would be curious to see, you know, how much you get from grants totally, and what types of grants are those, and if we were to better define what we do for youth, would that in fact give us an opportunity to apply for other monies? And so I think that it's going to be important for us to see how creative that you can be, and also listen to some of the suggestions that a lot of the speakers said today. But the one thing I will say to the speakers, Mr. Chairman, that came down, I mean, just because you do have some people that are over 40, that doesn't mean we need to put them in a wheelchair. I mean, we still have some purpose. Personally, though, I'm 39 and holding.
Okay.
So I don't know what the 40-year-olds think about. But the point I want to make, we need to creatively look at that. And my last question is, there's talk of reduction of about 100 positions. That's what I heard. Now, is that 100, will that come out of the 900 remaining after ERIP?
Yes, it will.
So we're talking about, under normal circumstances, the library would be staffed by approximately 1,400 employees.
That was back in the late 80s, sir.
Okay, and so now, so we're talking about, it would be, but back in the late 80s, how many branches did we have?
62.
And how many do we have now?
73.
Okay, so, I mean, it just kind of doesn't quite compute. But so the 100 would come out of the 900.
Correct.
See, so that's why I think that we need to come up with creative ways, adjusting the hours, and see if, you know, what that is. And like Mr. Reyes said, the key for us is, what nut is it that we have to crack? And so if we can get the figures that we would clear or net with that, then know what the gap is, then it makes it easier for us to make the kinds of decisions that we have to make. So with that, Mr. Chair, all I do is thank everybody for coming down, and I want to reassure them that this is something that we all take very seriously, and this is what leadership is all about. I mean, people, the actions we take over the next several months will dictate how we performed as leaders of this city.
With that being said, I'm going to call on Mr. Reyes to add to this, but would like to direct you in this report, Madam CLA, that we would have to council that this committee would like to recommend the city librarian to come up with a plan that would not displace. You could say the 100 workers you may be asked, but not displace them. There was some word of job sharing. Someone mentioned the other situations of reduction of hours of a worker, and working 32 instead of 40, but to keep the branch libraries open with the unfortunate reduction of the hours for Sunday, not just at Central, but other regional facilities at this time period because of the budget. And Mr. Reyes, you wanted to add that as well?
Yeah, I just showed you from the hip here what information we do have. I took a report back on what we would save if we were to shut down on Sundays. We mentioned 98,000. I just did a rough calculation, very rough. I was an English major, not a math major. And I'm looking at about 4.7 million a year. That would fill the gap and would avoid the 100 positions from being laid off. So can we get a report back, and what would we gain?
And that's just one library. I know.
What will we gain if we shut down on Sundays? And the savings, what will that equal to in positions? If we get a report back on that.
Yes, sir.
Central Library, and the report back's coming to council, because this is going forth, because this is a very fluid time. We want to be aggressive as a committee to have a statement as we go forward. Would you just come up and fill out a card and just make your 1-minute quick comment there? Martin, you have something you want to say? Just a second. Just sit down, but let the city librarian speak. He had his hand up first.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Alice Scott from the president of 3090. I just want some clarification. Of the 60 positions of messenger clerks that have been identified, I know that what the request is that the positions be full-time equivalents. The messenger clerks work half-time or less than. So are we really talking about 120 bodies, or are we speaking of 30 bodies to get to your 60?
We're thinking of the service, most important, and we're asking the city librarian to come back when he comes to council with a matrix that deals with the intricacies of the library, whether it's those who run the books from branch to branch, those who are the clerks, those who are the librarians, the teen librarians, the whole variety of people.
Right,
so we're not being specific on that.
Oh, okay, because again, if you identify 60 messenger clerks, you're really talking about a full-time equivalent, 60 full-time equivalent messenger clerk positions. You're really talking about, at a minimum, 120 bodies.
I understand that.
Okay.
We're looking, we want to keep everybody
All right.
in the city with their library service. We're going to have to reduce the hours. Okay, how do we reduce the hours? By keeping everybody who's dedicated to serve working. That's our goal. So we want to continue the service to the people of Los Angeles, number one, but we have to reduce the hours. And how do we do this? By trying to keep those who've committed to this profession employed without violating the budget crisis that we're in. So this is your direction as we go to council on that.
I wanted to mention two things, sir. One is that on a matter of principle for me, I am not recommending any closure, wholesale closure of any libraries whatsoever.
That's good.
If the situation got so severe that we can only be open one day a week, which, my God, I hope it never occurs, I would prefer to do that rather than trying to close any library. I think it's a mistake. It's the wrong signal to send to our community and to our kids as well. The second thing is that as we are looking at the rollout of the E-Rep program during this current fiscal year, if things go as we expect and with a few people maybe rescinding, we're looking at over 120 people who will also go out the door during this current fiscal year. Add that to the 110 vacant frozen positions. We've got a reduction of the workforce of over 250 people. We may be looking at reduction of hours during this current fiscal year as early as mid-April. So I want to make sure that we understand.
We understand that, but we don't want that, but we have to understand that if there's no money on the second floor to pay for those who provide the services, we have to deal with that issue. So we're going to have you scheduled, Madam Clerk, do we have a scheduling council? Do we have a time when we're, next week?
There is no report at this point to
So we're
have
going to get a
scheduled for
report to
council.
come to council that asks the chief librarian to come up with you can go on to council, a variety of measures, what it would cost to reduce your overhead to allow service to go forward, but to look at ways you could spread the service within the existing budget that you have. And also that the CAO provide a one sheet that talks about the charter, so there's no confusion, because I confused people last night by explaining it was from the property tax, but it's requirement of the charter from the general fund.
Calculation is based on that.
Right, so we need some explanation on that.
Could we ask the director for the latchkey information, the public safety element of the service?
You should be very, well, I use an example only because if you worked at a McDonald's, your regional manager could call the local manager and ask how many McNuggets are sold between 11 and 3. You know, we need to know what's our prime time to serve the people and how we could work that as the best. And are some communities 12 to 8 as opposed to 11 to 7? And see what the situation is on that. Are you clear, Madam CLA, for the report on that? And Mr. Stone? Because of Mr.
Thank you.
Shea, you get an extra 30 seconds.
Thank you. I hope I'll replace Mr. Shea's, the comments you make when you refer to librarians, as you know.
Well, thank you.
This is from the charter. For the financial support of the library department, there shall be appropriated an annual sum of not less than 0.0175% of assessed value of all property in the city as assessed for city taxes. Additional appropriations may be made from the general fund. So, I mean, I don't know what the interpretation might be, but it looks very clear, appropriated not less than that from all the value of all property in the city.
Correct.
It doesn't say the general fund. Now, I know the CAO might have his own interpretation.
Well, we'll get it clarified in writing before we go to council. We will notify everyone's here and everyone who's emailed. And I just want to just quickly say one email that I got from somebody here, many, that it talked about the libraries and how much they wanted to continue the libraries, etc. And then they said, I'm really sorry I ever voted for you. The extremely helpful traffic cops at Sunset and Highland and Melrose and Highland are now gone. You're not fixing the potholes on Highland or anywhere else. And now you want to cut my library. Thanks for nothing. You really should try up traveling up Highland and Valley and see what's happening, especially at rush hour. Potholes and traffic cops. We need them. Love, I got. It's public safety, it's public works, and it's public humanities. And those three public aspects create a city. If we remove the parks and libraries, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do if we don't have that. And also, I believe if you don't engage in community, all of us, you don't get that experience. Everybody, if a doctor checked the pulse of everybody walking out of the library, including the 92-year-old woman there, she would find that this is a great citizen. This is where we could win the battle on healthcare reform in our public libraries.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I do think we should be considering going to council. And again, to the library staff, creativity.
Right.
If there was ever a time for you to be creative,
And
it's now.
one last action on item number 2. We're going to ask that the library department create an optional card that says, I'm a member of the Friends of the Library, $50 a year, less than $1 a week, and that $50 would go directly to library hours only. You know, so that's a consensus I'm going with. Recommend that go forward. Is that all right, Mr. Wesson?
Fine.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Oh, hold on, excuse me, Chair, and then item number 3, the report regarding technology.
Item number 3 was the new technology. We still got to keep the current technology before we get to the new technology. We're going to hold that in committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.